Okay, you guys, here we go. Let's start building our website, right? So if you remember, let's go ahead and pull back up Paint. The way we were going to do this, we were going to have our main, and then from here, we were going to create another one. There we go. So, up top, we decided in the center all we really need is an about, our projects, and let's remember about projects and possibly links. And then from there we were also going to add a contact right here. From here our main page is going to basically look like a picture, and we'll have our about section right here. Pretty simple there. But what we're going to have as well is in our projects, and this is the part that we want to really show off as well. And then we'll have a project show up here, and that way we can go between each project. So that's what we're going to do. So there we go, guys. That's what we're going to basically set up as. So first things first, we need to create a new project. So we're going to go to our command prompt, change our directory. I'm going to my E drive to tutorials, and then from here we can go create React app, and then we will call it our resume site. From there, while that's creating, we are going to open the new folder. So we're going to go back here, and that's the folder we're going to open. So we can get rid of that one, come over here, and we'll just wait for it. So the way I personally like to build a site is I like to make everything functional, make it functional and efficient, make everything work how it should work, and then from there worry about making it look pretty. So that's how I like to build. You can build it design oriented, where you would come and you would say, okay, well, I'm going to set up and do the layout first, and then I'll worry about what's in there. We might do a little bit of both, and the only reason a little bit of both is this projects section right here, our projects. We are going to want to make sure this is centered on the screen, and then that we have these arrows. From there, it doesn't really matter what we put into the center. This is going to be a whole different template, a whole different page, I guess you could say, blank slab that we're going to put everything on. It's still going to be part of our main project. It's just going to be added in there as a component. So we can try and get that component to be there, and then these two components, until we have projects to set up, they're just going to be buttons that are there until we put something in. So they'll just be buttons that we're not going to use until we get those projects. For now, let's focus on getting the about, getting the project set up like this. I'm going to personally link to the YouTube channel and then have a contact, and all this contact we'll have for now is truly just my email address and name. But there we have it. So how are we doing? We are still in progress here. Let's go ahead and just wait. So one of the features before I did tell you we're going to be using Bootstrap. So while that's loading, let's go over here and look at Bootstrap. Most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript library in the world. So we can download this all or get it from a CDN. However, I believe React Bootstrap. Let's double check before we do anything. Because there's a React Bootstrap here. Currently targets Bootstrap version 3. This is mobile oriented, by the way. So there is that. Let's see if we can get to documentation. npm install React DOM, React Save Bootstrap. Because React Bootstrap doesn't depend on a very precise version of Bootstrap, we don't ship with any included CSS. However, some style sheet is required to use these components. How and which Bootstrap styles you include is up to you, but the simplest way is to include the latest styles from the CDN. So that's a content delivery network, I believe is what that stands for. And basically there's two ways. So you can either download and include the entire file for you, or you can just put this line of code into the top of your code, and that pulls it all from a website instead. So it's completely up to you. Let's see, so getting started, we have the introduction. Browser support, browser globals, layout. Let's see if that takes us. So this is basically what we're going to be using. This is how Bootstrap works, is on a grid system. So if you look at the code, we have a grid. We start with a grid. There's a row, and inside the row is a column. There's up to 12 columns. Okay, so whatever happens, we need to make it fit up to 12. So notice we have 12 for XS, 12, XS 6. But we do have the MD for medium, 8 and 4, that should add up to 12. 6 and 6. If it's XS, it's going to hide this third. And then medium 4, 6, 4 does not add up to 12 either. It should add up to 12 though. All this really does is it tells the browser, it tells Bootstrap itself what size you need your, or how much of the page to take for your column. So we'll get into that more as we actually do this, but here we go. There's some more documentation if you want to read it. I believe we're ready to go. So very first thing we have is we have this app.js. So if we just run this through our command prompt, npm start, if you remember last time we did this, it will pull up the browser. No such file or directory. Oh, sorry, my bad. We did not change directory to the resume site. Now npm start. Here we go. If you remember, this will line up to this code right here. To get started, edit the source /app.js and save to reload, which says that right here. Now before we go any further, let's React file structure so that we get everything correct. Okay, is there a recommended way to structure React projects? So doesn't have opinions on how you put files into folders. That said, there are a few common approaches popular in the ecosystem. Okay. One common way to structure projects is locate CSS, JS, and tests together inside folders grouped by feature or route. Okay. Grouping by file type is another popular way. So API has those. There's a components folder. Some people also prefer to go further and separate components into different folders depending on their role in the application. For example, atomic design is a design methodology built on this principle and avoid too much nesting. There are many pain points associated with deep directory nesting in JavaScript projects. It becomes harder to write relative imports between them or to update those imports when the files are moved. Unless you have a very compelling reason to use a deep folder structure, consider limiting yourself to a maximum of 3 or 4 nested folders within a single project. Of course, only a recommendation, and it may not be relevant to your project, but that is something we are going to do. So let's go ahead and let's do it this way. Group by file type. We could do it this way, but yeah, we'll do it the other way. So first things first, where do we put it, right? Doesn't really say. We have our source folder. So let's go ahead and create a new folder here called components. And here we will make a new component. Let's call it about.js. And then another component, projects.js. And of course, we're going to have, we may not use that for now, but we will create it. That way we can basically know what we need to create, right? Contact.js. These are all our components. Now, inside of here, we're going to create another folder, projects folder. This is going to have our actual projects inside of it. So like, for example, the tic-tac-toe game we would put inside of here, and we would link it up through this component, okay? So if we remember, how do we create a React component? How to create a React component. Here's 3 ways. Using variable function. Let's not do it that way. Components and props. Here we go. Let's create these class components. So we have to extend react.component if you remember, and then we also have to have this render function. So that's our requirements. Let's go ahead and copy this so that we have it. Class about extends react.component. From here we have a render, and this is going to render our CSS. Return. Make sure we have that return statement with a semicolon. From here, let's do an H1 just like that. H1. So that's gonna create our about page. We went ahead and saved it. Now we need to call it, right? So let's go ahead and get rid of that. Save that again. Where do we call it from? We call it from our app.js. So we need to first figure out how to call a component. So React call component from app.js. Right? Building your first React app. Let's see what they tell us. Here's how that will look. Okay. Not too worried about that. After you've started the app, go ahead and open up the application in your text editor. The first thing you want to look at is the file structure. Main folders are a source folder and a public folder. So index.html located in the public folder. If you do link up any external style sheets or need to add Bootstrap or another feature, this is where you would add it. Okay, perfect. You can also change the title here, which is, as you can see, I have failed to do. Okay, yep. The next file you may want to look at is your index.js in the source folder, because that calls app. Just like this, React DOM render app. So just like we did here, inside this source, we have components. We'll add this for the CSS later. Since we have a separate components file for each component, we can work on them separately, divide responsibility, exactly like we've been saying, right? So, what do we need to do? Well, we still need to import, right? So if you look up here at his file structure, import, like banner, prod disk, product image, etc. Import from here, okay. And class app extends React component to call super. Perfect. So let's go ahead back over to here, and just like it showed, right? Import about. Now, look again, did they have the .js on there? Nope. Why? Because .js just tells us the file type, and we don't need to say the file type here. So, go back, import about, which is the class, from dot a slash, about, sorry, forgive my writing, about. So, will this work? Let's find out, huh? We can get rid of all of this. Let's keep the div for the class name app. And if everything works correctly, we can just say about. And it should render this component. Module not found. Why? Well, because we have it nested inside our components, right? So we now need to say slash components slash about. Let's see what happens now. React is not defined. Act must be in scope when using JSX. Well, what did we miss this time? Well, we probably missed some imports, didn't we? Specifically, that line. Well, export default imported as about was not found. So we are missing something. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. React, paste that line. Let's see what we get. I believe the components must start with an uppercase letter. It's not the case anymore. Yep, okay. And it seemed to me that the line was export default right here. So, React export component. Here we go. Try defaulting the exports in your component. Export default class my navbar extends React component. Here we go. Export default class. Let's see what we get this time. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So, lesson learned, right? When we came up here with React components, because they're in a different location, we need to export them. So we imported the React and the component so that we can extend it, but then we need to export default class up there in the line. So this has to be in our line in order to call it from over here. Now, that does give us another. We could also, if we wanted, export default class test extends React.component as well, right? Let's go ahead, copy this render method, testing. Now, if we go back over here, what do you think will happen if we just call test? Well, we have the class here. We exported exactly the same. We imported from a file, from this specific file, right? Well, let's go look. Look at that. Only one default. Export allowed per module. So it doesn't like this. Well, okay, let's see what happens now. Test is not defined. Uh-oh. Well, why is it not defined? Because if you look right here, we never actually imported test. We can just kind of do this, comma, test. Go ahead and refresh. It does not like the comma. So this way of writing did not work. But we did the same thing right here, right? So let's try that with the T in the side. Super expression must be either null or a function, not undefined. So did we miss something? It definitely called up. Yep, doesn't like us. Why? Because this line doesn't work. Let's go ahead and copy all of it. Go ahead and say test. And now, not undefined. Still doesn't like us. So let's not do that in our code, right? We could get this to work if we played around with it more, but let's not do that. Typically, we want to have one class per file. That's why we created different files. It's a lot more maintainable for your code later on. So we have h1. Let's go ahead and add. Now before we get any further, let's look at this semicolon. We need this at the end, I believe, right? React return statement. Look at that. That's what we need right here, right? We need parenthesis, parenthesis. So when we return, we can return everything. We'll close it over here with a semicolon and that bracket. Return over there. Now before we add more code, let's make sure this works. Looks good, right? Remember, when we save, it refreshes automatically, so we don't have to hit that save button. So it still works. Let's go ahead and add a figure. Inside the figure, we can have a fig caption. And that's going to say my image. And then we can have the actual image right here. Source equals. Now, what are we missing? We need to give it the source, right? Well, inside of here, we need a folder for images. So let's go ahead and say new folder. Graphics. Let's call it graphics just to be safe. Now let's go to my pictures and see if I even have any images of me on here. Let's go ahead and copy and move. Let's copy it. I tried to move it. Copy. Paste. Is that going to work out? it did not work out. So try it one more time. Copy. Should be able to paste it. Still not showing up. So we'll just go to the root file structure. We're in my E drive, tutorials, site, source, graphics, paste. There you go. Let's rename this myself.jpg. Now, same thing as before, we need to do /graphics/myself.jpg. Then we can close the figure. So we got figure closed, we got the image, fig caption. Let's see what happens. It doesn't like us. Must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. All we do is we go Google our error. Wrong. Correct. Oh. You see the difference? They have it inside this div. So we need to do the same thing. Div. This is going to be our main div. Close that. Now we can have everything else. And it should like us now. But my image did not show up. Here it looks like we did it correct, right? So why is it not showing up? That's our next question. Simple but common. Misspelling the image name. Wrong extension. Malformed image tag. Could that be it? SRC is good. It does not like that. It needs that slash to close it. It just isn't displaying. Let's open it in a new tab. Go ahead and inspect. Would that fix it? Well, here's the issues we run into, right? We are in the components and we need to go to this graphics. So our issue actually comes, we have to go up one level first. Took me a second to remember that, you guys, because we're in this folder. If you remember, we're in this folder. we need to actually go up one level back to the source folder and then down to the graphics. So 2 dots will do that for us, and now it should show up. It does not. Component is defined but never used. And these are just warnings. Image elements must have an alt prop either with meaningful text or an empty string for decorative images. Okay. Alt text. Let's make sure we did that right. Alt. It's just alt. We'll go ahead and leave it as an empty string. That shouldn't matter. That was just a warning that we got rid of. And you'll see it says my image right there, but it doesn't grab this. And we have the picture there. Components, we go up. From about, we go up to components. Let's try 2 of these. See what happens. Still doesn't show up. Let's get rid of this for a little bit. We can add it back in later. That way I can at least see that that's still showing. Let's go ahead, JavaScript, file pathing. It's located in the images folder at the root of the current web. It's located in the folder one level up from the current folder. Should have worked. I think we need a relative path. So let's go this way. Let's Google some more HTML. My image won't show. Let's do a couple things. Let's copy this. Let's go back to source, components. Let's put it right here first. From here, let's just try doing exactly this. Well, that didn't work. Let's try just like that. So it might have to do with the image. Image for HTML. Let's go to images. Let's save image as. Go to my E drive. And we'll put it here first. Go back to my code, and we see it right here. Download PNG. Interesting. Let's go ahead and take out more things. That way we can just debug one thing, right? Image source is download.png right there. Let's inspect. Scroll that up just a little bit. Should be inside there. Even hovering over this should show us the image, but it doesn't. It wants us to go from localhost 3000 / instead of in my source folder. So that's part of the issue. /. Let's see what happens now with this. 3000 /. Well, that's not what we want either, is it? Let's use a dot. Nope, same place. It does not like us there. So, however, source / graphics myself dot JPEG Okay guys, it worked here. It did work here, right? I think it has something to do with the comes to this index.html React app title Thomas's site. While we're here, might as well change that. Let's Google a little bit differently. React image source to okay. Here's the file architecture. Same thing. We have components here, image there. You're using a relative URL, which is relative to the current URL, not the file system. You could resolve this by using absolute URLs. Okay, but that's not great, right? Relative URL. Where is slash details coming out? Interesting. We can import. We don't need that line anymore, so let's go ahead, import the, we don't want logo, we want from dot, oh, not there, my bad, we want it here. Dot slash graphics slash myself dot JPEG. And then how do they end that? Source logo, just like that. Curly brackets, get rid of everything there, myself. Let's see what happens. Dot graphics, myself dot JPEG, tutorials, resume sites, source components. Right. There we have it. Okay guys, a little lesson learned right there. To get images to work in React, we're actually going to want to import them. They said the relative paths worked as well, but from all of that time we couldn't get it working, right? So we have now learned that we need to import an image. This actually does work from a relative path, so we go up from components, up one folder, down into our graphics, and then grab the myself.jpg. So now that we know that works, we can go ahead and delete it from the other locations. There we have it. That cleans up our code a little bit. And then remember, we do the brackets. So now we can surround this back inside a figure. Fig caption. Me. Fig caption. And then we have the image. Let's go ahead and close the figure. Just like that. Test is not defined. Of course it's not defined. We want it to go back to about. There we have it. Now, this is the fig caption. Caption on bottom. Let's go ahead and move it down to the bottom. feel like there should be a better way. Let's move the fig caption underneath, see if that fixes it. Image and then fig caption. There we have it. That's much easier than the CSS way, right? Okay, now what else do we need? We're just writing some basic HTML here, aren't we? Well, we need a different div, and we'll go ahead and close that div before I forget. Inside of this div, let's go ahead and write a paragraph. So this is going to be our resume, right? We basically want to give our work, our education, and some background. So let's see. Began coding at Newmont University in 2010. I learned HTML5 and CSS3 along with Java, .NET, .NET, and JavaScript. From here, I have web development bootcamp, Next, Redux, MongoDB, and handlebars. But let's go ahead and let's change this. I don't like this. And you can write whatever you want here. So go ahead and give it your best for your resume. Let's I am passionate about a competitive ballroom dancer and truly loved I love to stay in shape. There we go. That's a decent paragraph, I think. Let's go ahead and make an ordered list. Now, some of these are little semantics. You could do an unordered list. It doesn't necessarily matter. The reason why I'm doing an ordered list, though, is because our list items, what we're actually putting in here, are in a relevant order. When you do your education, when you do your work experience, you do it from like chronologically backwards. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do this in bold. Let's do it this way. H3. Balance of nature. Close that H3. We're going to break to the next line. From here, actually, let's go ahead and do some spacing. Now I have to look this up. HTML tab. Let's do it inside a span. We're going to give it a class called year. Close span. July 2018. 18. September. Now this wasn't very long, guys. Don't judge me on here. Basically what happened is I disagreed with a communications class that they wanted me to take, and I took the class, I passed the class, I did everything required. But because I expressed my opinion that the class was bad, which everybody else also agreed with, but I'm the only one that expressed it to the people, they decided to let me go. Very interesting. Not worth my time anyways, right? There's other jobs out there. So here we go. There's that break. We have a paragraph. And what I did there, worked in XJS for a backend in PHP. For internal, where with an API written in PHP, used MySQL, maintain the data storage, containing previously written code and fixing, creating solutions for ability. Fixed customer facing website, which was written in WordPress. Guys, just so you know, this was WordPress. I believe it's like 27% of the internet's written in WordPress. I feel bad for the internet. It is not my favorite. People like it. There's uses for it. But I feel like if you're going to be a programmer, if you're going to learn how to do web development, don't do WordPress. Just my 2 cents there. But I did figure it out. Fixed customer facing website, which was written in WordPress. With PHP and Angular. Handle logic. Yep, that was lots of fun. And by fun, I mean it was not fun at all. So there we have it. Did I close my paragraph? Let's find out. I did not close my paragraph. So close paragraph. Let's go ahead and copy. Now remember, I said normally don't copy code, but in this case it's okay. Because really all we're doing is we're creating our resume. So let's see. CenturyLink. Year August of 2015. I'm just thinking here, guys. Sorry. I want to say it was actually 2007. Yep, 2015 to 2017. There we go. Questions. Solving internet related networking issues. Fine. That should be basic right there. Not too worried about it. Here we go. Again, we're not too worried about the format so far, but here we go. So as you see, that all shows up. From here, there's some work experience. Before that, let's go ahead and put some education. So ID equals work. Well, ID equals education. Close the L. LI. H3, so we keep them the same. Most recent, Let's do Helio. I'd have to look up their whole name. I'm not too worried about it for this part. And then we're doing a span. Class equals year. That was March 2017. Go ahead and close the span. And then from here, a paragraph. Focusing on full stack dev with React, Node, handlebars. We didn't use Bootstrap, we used handlebars. React, Node, handlebars, MongoDB, and Redux. Close the paragraph. Close our list item. Let's go ahead and copy that. I have two more that I'm putting. Steven Henniger. And that was going to be 2016, August 2015 through completed bachelor's degree in computer science with emphasis on development. There we have that. Vermont University. I believe somewhere in August 2010 through May 2012, something like that. About a year and a half I spent there. Initial venture into programming, learned Java, .NET, SQL, Java, .NET, SQL. What else did we learn? We learned HTML5, CSS3. Interesting that we have to put those still, but there is a difference between HTML4 and HTML5, and same with the CSS, so we will put that just to be safe. As well as project methodologies, as waterfall, Scrum, and Scrum. There we have it. We did more, but that's going to be basics there. Now, above all of this, what I actually want is an unordered list. ID equals skills. Close the unordered list. List item. Let's start with HTML. Close that list item. CSS. And all we're doing here is filling out our about, and after we're done with that, we'll go ahead and end this, and from there we'll start making our projects next time. So HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQL,